Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Non Sequitur Nerds. Tonight, we're going to need you to get out your grainiest camera because we're going to be talking cryptids tonight. Well, a little different than what we normally do, but still going to be a fun time. As always, though, I'm Tim, joined by my buddy Ian. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, things are going fairly well over here. Wrapping up a bit of a week. Gearing up to try to finish up a long weekend. Well, I say long weekend as in like a long busy weekend.
Right.
Here soon, and then we'll see where things go from there. But all in all, things aren't too terribly bad. How about yourself?
I mean, not too bad. I mean, work's still work. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's these last couple days, weather's actually been really nice out, so that's been a nice reprieve from the typical summer temperatures we get this time. So,
Right,
but yeah, all in all, not bad, not bad. Kids are back in school, so I mean that quiets down a good portion of my day when I get home.
right. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, as you said, tonight we're going to be talking cryptids. So again, not something that we typically do, but we've explored a little bit of the fun and the supernatural before
Oh yeah,
in various aspects. So let's have a little bit more fun tonight. So
there we go.
as we talk about cryptids, there's obviously some of the very very big players that are out there that everybody knows about: Bigfoot, Yeti, the Loch Ness monster, who owes you tree fitty. Um,
That, like that guy
then
we went to high school with, Jory,
yeah, the missing link.
the missing
I said
link.
I said Bigfoot earlier.
Oh yeah, there you
Um,
go.
you have other famous ones like the Chupacabra. The,
Chupa thingy. How about that? I like it. Got a nice ring to it.
yeah, exactly. Um, so, but I mean, there's tons of different cryptids out there. I mean,
Yeah.
almost every state in the United States has its version of a cryptid, and if you think about it, cryptids themselves, kind of come from legends and the like. Whether it's I saw a thing in the woods and it,
Right.
it it was looking at me.
I still remember there was. You can find the video online. There is an interview that a news broadcaster did with some redneck who claims he saw a Bigfoot, and the dude has like the greatest southern drawl ever, but he's like, I saw it and it was right there, and I grabbed my stick and I said, get. And he went right down that path. He had beautiful eyes, and it's just like the dude. I mean, like I fully believe that he thinks he saw something. I think
Right.
it may have been after a couple bottles of moonshine, though.
Yeah, I mean, cryptids are not something that's new to
Oh,
the history of humanity. If you think about it, they were inventing cryptids back in the
medieval times, even.
Greco-Roman eras.
Oh yeah, even that. Well, I mean, think about it. Like
The
all
Minotaur,
the
the
Gorgon, Medusa, like
tyrants.
all those
Yeah,
stories. I mean, those are things that, as far as what we know in history, those are things that they didn't exist. They were stories. They were legends about stuff. And like you had said, the same can be said about cryptids today. Things like Bigfoot. Is there the possibility that there is some large ape-like creature wandering the woods of? I say Bigfoot. I mean, so it's going to be Washington, but like there are multiple creatures. Bigfoot, the Yeti, Sasquatch, the skunk ape. All across the world. Is it possible there's a creature like that out there? I mean, yeah, it is entirely possible. But something like a Medusa or a Minotaur, somebody may have seen something that they thought like, oh well, this is what it looked like to me, and that's where the legends come from. I mean, if you go hundreds of years from now, Bigfoot won't be so much a cryptid as it would be oh well, this is a 2000s U.S. era legend.
right. Yeah, I mean, and then you've also got even some of the more macro level things like dragons. You
But
know,
yeah,
the concept of a dragon, which interestingly has spread throughout pretty much every continent. Every
yeah,
continent has their own version of a dragon.
right? I mean, you have your traditional winged style dragons of the European era. You've got your more long wingless dragons of our Asian friends. You've got like even Loch Ness monster Nessie, a water in some interpretations of it anyway, a water like large lizard. I mean, do
Right.
we
I
do
mean,
we do we have
even
a
things like Quetzalcoatl.
yeah
You know,
from South America? Yep,
yeah, Norse mythology. Jormungandr is
exactly.
I mean, it could be considered a type of nidhogg. Um, they're all potential aspects of dragons that have existed in various cultures
Oh, absolutely.
throughout time immemorial. I mean, even the concept, the Bible even mentions the Leviathan.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Well, I think
so
doesn't the Bible also mention unicorns in there somewhere? Like,
uh,
not making a joke. Like, I vaguely remember hearing something about that. Somewhere in there it mentions unicorns.
uh, uh, but anyway, yeah. So there's there's lots of cryptids out there, and there are concepts of cryptids that are out there. And again, we see these allegories for cryptids, very similar shaped cryptids everywhere. If you look at the Nessie like cryptids, you think about like dinosaurs and stuff like
Yep.
that. The plesiosaur or a Leopleurodon or something
Leoplerodon.
along those lines.
Right, for sure.
That so it kind of makes you think that like maybe these creatures were envisioned because people actually found these bones or things like that, and they went, "Oh crap!"
That
Uh,
that's here in the water. Oh no, there's another one. I bet.
right, right, exactly. I mean, dinosaur bones were first in modern times dug up, only a few hundred years ago, really.
Well, I mean, it's weird that like if you look at when they were discovered, it's really like as far as being documented and knowing what they are, it's really not that long ago. I mean, a lot
I
of the
mean,
events that you think is ancient history are what was it they said that like most most events that we consider ancient history actually happened more recent to us than they did to to the extinction of the dinosaurs,
right?
which
Yes.
is nuts. But yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, if you want to, if you think about it, woolly mammoths were still around when the pyramids were being built.
yeah. And like most people, you think woolly mammoths, you think, oh, prehistoric times before there was anything. No, pyramids were being built.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's very possible that people accidentally dug up dinosaur bones and they went, "Oh crap, I just found a dragon." I mean, can you imagine what would happen if somebody in like
Right?
medieval Europe dug up a T-Rex skull?
Oh, they'd be
They
terrified.
would
They'd be
piss
terrified.
themselves. I mean, and in all honesty, they'd probably just like bury it back again and go, nope,
It's cursed bones.
right, just nope the hell right out of there.
Well, I
But
mean,
I mean,
or even not even going with fossil records, even coming across an actual creature that you've never seen before, even something like that is like you don't know what that is. You have no frame of reference for it. Even something like that can be a very jarring experience. Like imagine you've never seen a bear before. You have no concept of what a bear is. You're walking across the woods and this thing that's 5 times larger than you just saunters out of the woods and looks at you. The hell do you do with that information? You're gonna run for your life. You're gonna tell everybody that it was a beast 5 stories tall. Fangs as long as my arm, and I mean, bears are big, but they're not that big. No,
yeah, but it also, if, even looking at some of the more weirder modern creatures that we have around here, have you ever seen a Japanese salamander?
they look weird,
Well, not only do they look weird, they're like 5 feet long.
right? Or like
They're
a
considered
Komodo
they're
dragon. I mean,
considered quite dangerous.
right?
Yeah,
They got
I
their
mean,
names because they are large lizards. They are dragon-like.
right,
But then you get into some of like the weirder cryptids, like I mean another mostly famous one, the jackalope, which is literally just a jackrabbit with antlers. I mean, nothing mystical about it as far as I know, nothing magical. It's just a weird creature that shouldn't exist. Something like that, like okay, cool. But then you get the flip side. I mean, there's some cryptids like the Wendigo as an example, which its whole thing is it eats people. That's its whole thing. It eats people. Something like that, a
right,
little more terrifying than, a rabbit with antlers.
right. Or then you have some of the more ancient. I want to say Navajo, but I don't want to be. I don't want to claim to know too much of their culture, but the skinwalkers,
Yep,
the
yep.
uh,
I
which is
I
in and of itself
think you're
terrifying.
right on Navajo. Dude, yeah, like the whole concept of like at least how they're interpreted nowadays, like that's terrifying. That is like what do you do? You just you pray to whatever god you might have and you hope for the best.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about something, a lot of these things could have also just, you know, legend born from, fairy tales that people would tell their kids to like get them to sleep at night.
Right.
Well, I don't know that that would get them to sleep, but
I wouldn't
get,
get me to sleep as a kid. Like, nope, I'm gonna stay wide awake.
if you go outside at night, the Wendigo will eat you.
Well, guess I'm never going outside again ever.
Right, exactly.
I'm gonna
So
somebody start door dashing in the Amish country because I ain't leaving.
yeah, it's no joke.
Well, I mean,
Um,
it's interesting to speculate on a lot of these things because I mean, a lot of them I imagine probably were, like you said, legends that somebody made up, and it just kind of got passed down. But then, I mean, you've got things like, I mean, like werewolves as an example. Like the whole concept of a werewolf, how we interpret it is a man who through either magical or some kind of supernatural means, transforms at every full moon into a wolf man. That could have easily been something like, some or a prehistoric hunter killed a wolf and wore its pelt to keep warm. Somebody saw it and got terrified that there was a wolf man. It could have even been something like that, or maybe there is something like that running around. I mean, we don't know. That's the whole thing on cryptids is they can't be categorized because we have no definitive proof. Well, both ways actually, to either prove or disprove their existence. They are an unknown quantity. So I mean, technically, when most people think cryptids, they think a lot of like the creatures we've mentioned. Technically, any creature that is uncategorized technically falls under that umbrella term of once you get
right.
proof of it, then it becomes, they categorize it, they give it the Latin name of whatever. They let you know, okay, what's closely related to this. They can study it. They can analyze what it is. But then it's no longer cryptid. It's an animal. It's a
I mean, even if you look at some things like the coelacanth,
yeah,
which was it was thought to be extinct
yep. And then
for,
they caught one,
and then they caught one.
and
So
they've caught several since then. Actually,
yeah, they're not extinct.
yeah,
They
they're very
are
much alive.
yeah, they're very much alive and a flourishing species. And there's definitely plenty of space on this planet that things could exist without us knowing about it.
See, like
We can't get satellite penetration in the rainforests.
right.
The mountainous regions, caves and things like that. Now, do I believe that there is an 8 foot tall ape man that lives by itself out there?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
right.
Uncle Stu, who's really hairy and got really drunk and no one's seen in 20 years.
Some
But
redneck that got lost in the woods, can't find his way out, and keeps eating fermented berries.
exactly.
But no, I mean, like I think personally, if we're going to find anything, I personally think it's going to be in the ocean because there's still a ocean that we haven't discovered, whether because it's too remote, too deep, whatever have you. Like I was not too long ago, I was actually watching a video that was uh, recorded sounds from the ocean that they don't know what creature made it. Like there are
Hmm.
research centers all over the world. Like they can tell you, from like 300 miles away, a tiny blip they pick up. They can, oh well, that's a blue whale, female. Like they know what they're doing. These were sounds that no place of study has been able to identify what they are. And they can even tell, oh well, that's volcanic eruption on the ocean floor. That's a rock slide underneath. That's tectonic plates moving. They don't know what some of these sounds are. So I mean, they're right there is definitive that there's stuff in our ocean. We don't know what it is. We don't know how or why.
I mean, in reality, they didn't prove the existence of things like the giant squid or the colossal squid until not that too long ago.
Yeah,
Like,
people thought that was just an old sailor's tale, and no, now we've got proof. And
I
again,
mean,
that
the concept of the kraken is really born from things like sailors seeing a giant squid on the surface.
yeah,
it was very rare, which made the story even more fantastic because you have all of these people sailing everywhere, and then suddenly you have this one ship that, for a fleeting moment, sees an eyeball the size of a dinner plate
yep,
and some tentacles. And then it disappears, and
yep,
everyone's just like,
yep. And the story gets told, the story gets embellished, the story grows, and what may have been a 20-foot squid is now a 500-foot monster that rips somebody's ship in half. When the reality of it is, it was probably a average-sized giant squid that just
Yeah,
passed by a boat, looked up, and went nah, and went back down to the ocean.
yeah, exactly. So, I
But
mean,
but
weird stuff washes up on shore all a lot more frequently than what I think most people realize.
oh, absolutely. Well, I mean,
Uh,
even like deep sea fishermen like will pull stuff up in their nets. They're like, we don't know what this thing is. I mean,
right,
sometimes it's a half digested animal. Other times it is a new species of something. Um,
right,
but I mean, then you've got and Ian and I were actually talking about this a little bit. You've got some things that are even more mundane, like the jackalope. Okay, that's still kind of fantastical. One that's local to our state, in the town of Churubusco, is the named Beast of Busco, which is literally just a really big turtle. I mean, that's I'm not downplaying. I know though Busco is very proud of this legend. But it's just a big snapping turtle. I mean, some reports said that the beast was they estimated it to be 500 pounds, which is a really big snapping turtle. Others have said that it's as large as a Volkswagen bus and everything in between. So I mean, it
right.
ranges from wow, that's a really big turtle up to oh my god, that's a huge turtle. So it's pretty broad, but I mean, I think a lot of cryptids that we hear about are somebody saw something that they either didn't know what it was or it was just out of the ordinary enough that the story got embellished as time went on.
Right.
And I mean, like with the Beast of Busco, that's probably the case. It was probably just a really big snapping turtle, but I mean, it drew. I think it was back in the 40s. It drew a lot of attention. Like they were doing all kinds of stuff to try to catch it. I mean, even since then, like they've even drained part of the lake to try to see of where it was found, allegedly found, to see if like okay, if we dredge the lake, can we find this thing? Like they even put in like multiple female snapping turtles that was in the middle of mating season to try to draw the thing up onto shore. And I mean, obviously they never found it, but like something like that, it's that one's I would put that one in the realm of highly plausible.
Right.
Maybe not to the size of a Volkswagen bus, but a 300 plus pound snapping turtle, I could see that. Given the right environment, right food source, things like that. That one's believable.
Yeah, I mean, there's been evidence of massive creatures, especially in the uh, reptile type genus.
So if they don't get that big, is that a reptile dysfunction?
Womp, 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 womp.
Womp
Uh,
womp womp.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's cryptids all over the place, and a lot of the times they start off as these stories, but then nowadays people are kind of hanging on to them as almost tourist attractions
Yeah.
or things that they can do to it's like they're proud of their legends. Like you've mentioned Churubusco is very proud of the Beast of Busco.
Well, I mean, they have a giant as you're coming into town. You're heading south going into. There is a giant turtle statue. I mean, it's a very like animated turtle, but I mean, it's
Mhm.
a huge sign. It says, "Welcome to Turtle Town, USA," and they have a big statue of a turtle waving at you from the roadside. I mean, they're very proud of it. Um, like the town of Roswell. Everybody knows what Roswell is famous for. You go there, and I mean, there are countless places selling like little alien like tchotchkes of all various sizes. Like if you go to Washington State, there are museums. I mean, not like huge, but I mean there are museums dedicated to like Bigfoot and evidence that they found, and there's all kinds of gift shops and stuff. It's nuts. I mean, I cannot for the life of me remember where the Mothman is from, but like they have it.
Virginia's. It's from the Virginias.
Yeah, I think West Virginia, maybe.
Well, considering that the Mothman was Mason County, West Virginia,
Okay,
United States.
they have a
Considering,
giant statue of Mothman like right there in the in the middle of one of their towns.
yeah, and if you kind of look at the Mothman's funny because to me anyway, because if you look at the overall design of it, it's basically just a black silhouette with red eyes.
Right.
No, you could not fake that at all. There's no way.
You can
God
tell
forbid
which
you.
one of us is the skeptic in our duo here.
I'm not necessarily a skeptic. I. It's one of those things where
You
the
tried to
absence
look
of
at the
evidence.
logic behind it.
the logic behind it, but it's also the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence to me. So just because
Okay,
we've not found something does not mean that it could not possibly exist.
right.
It is unlikely given the certain scenarios, but it would be very myopic and short-sighted of me to just completely downplay it, because then I would have to go and say, I could potentially extend that out and say things like, "There's absolutely no way that aliens exist in the universe. For
Right.
some damn reason, this little ball of dust and space dirt is the only one in the whole universe that managed to cultivate some form of intelligent life.
Well,
Trillions of stars and planets."
intelligence is debatable, Ian.
Oh yes, intelligence is subjective, as is most things in the world. But point being is that if I take that very myopic point of view and say these cryptids are either never existed, don't exist, or never could exist, then that's not a point of view. That's not the way that I generally live.
Right.
So, but again, I mean, I tease about the Mothman just simply because if you look at the design of it, you go, yeah, okay. I mean, they could have just saw somebody's, I don't know, jammies floating in the wind. Maybe they found, maybe it was like an albino house cat that with the red eyes that they saw in the middle of the night. Um,
All cryptids are just albino house cats. You heard it here first, folks.
exactly.
Nessie, albino house cat. Bigfoot, albino house cat.
I mean,
Jersey Devil, albino house cat.
the concept of these cryptids and things like that are enough that they took the concept of the Mothman and made that one of the main enemies in Fallout 76.
Well, I
Like
mean,
it was like a big bad enemy in Fallout 76.
well, I mean, hey, I mean, there was that movie, The Mothman Prophecies, which honestly I really enjoyed that. It was a really good film. But I mean, cryptids have gone from being like folklore, legends, or something that people try to always prove, and like Ian said there, they have become kind of ingrained in as part of our pop culture. I mean, whether it's through movies based on them, and I mean, even there are some cryptids that we know for a fact are man-made. As an example, Slenderman. That was originally just like a short story that somebody wrote for a horror story competition. But now, I mean, it has been so ingrained into our culture that it's kind of been given honorary cryptid status, even though like we have definitive proof that this is a thing that somebody made up for a story. But yet now there's been movies about it. There's been multiple games about. Um, but there's still some people out there that go, no, no, I know of a kid that was taken by it. Like I saw it in the woods once. The guy even flat out said, "This is not based on any experience I had. This is strictly just a scary story I wrote for a competition, or for it was either a competition or for like a thing on Reddit that they were having people write stuff for. But like we know for a fact that that doesn't exist, but people are still, for whatever reason, wanting it to exist. Something like that. Like why would you want that to exist?
Yeah, I mean, even then, there's some stories out there like across the pond in England. Have you ever you've heard of the Beast of Exmoor or the Beast of Bodmin Moor?
Yep.
It's a legendary large cat that lives out in the wilds of England, which in theory is not really that unplausible. It
Yeah.
could have been, I mean, some rich bastard that bought a panther. It could have escaped and is
Right.
just living out in the moors.
I mean,
Like,
because we don't know of anybody that saw a cougar on his back porch that escaped from somebody's house.
yeah,
It was me. Um,
yeah.
but I mean, like, and even if we're gonna talk across the pond, I mean, there are countless European tales of fae folk who, I mean, there are countless legends, countless stories, and a lot of people who even to this day still claim that we've seen the fae folk. We've seen them out in the woods. You always treat them with respect.
Well, I
And
mean, if you look at things like the concept of the will-o-wisp, right?
right,
The will-o-wisp, are kind of these ethereal lights or whatever that you see that lead people to their deaths or jump out of wagons and try to kill you. Uh,
that only happened
but
once in our game, Ian.
but if you think about like where those legends come from, they come from England and Scotland and Ireland, places with moors and bogs and stuff like that. You could probably, again, I'm not trying to be a skeptic, but you could explain it away as literally just like light reflecting off of swamp
I'll
gas.
say swamp gas.
Swamp gas. I mean, in this case, it probably literally was light reflecting off of swamp gas.
Right.
Um, that causes the shimmer effect, and people die because they go to follow the lights and get stuck in the bog.
Right.
Like they literally get sucked into a bog because they're trying to figure out what this light is.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
the again, the concept of a will o' the wisp is something that is very well rooted in something that's real.
Right.
Um, it's but it I mean, does it mean that it couldn't exist? I mean, I've never seen one,
Yeah,
but
I say I've never seen any of the Fey folks. That doesn't mean that they they might. Well, I mean that's the thing is.
I've never seen a great white shark. Does that mean they don't exist?
I mean birds aren't real, Ian. The internet told us this.
Uh, that's correct. Except for our druid friend who can summon them.
Exactly.
Um,
But no, I
but I
mean
mean, again, and you look at some creatures that exist today, and like there's some terrifying shit out there. Have you ever seen a weta?
I'm not familiar with what that is. I don't think.
Look up Google weta real quick. WETA.
Well, that's a
And
action figure manufacturing company.
no, it's a New Zealand creature.
What in
Uh,
God's name is that? It's a giant frickin' pincher bug grasshopper thing.
yeah, it's a
What
giant
the
spiked
hell are those?
it's a giant spiked armored cricket, but they're they're harmless. Like they eat vegetables.
Yeah,
But it
there's
is
one eating a
still
carrot. It's bigger than the carrot.
yeah, but the point being is like this thing is nightmare fuel.
Yeah, just a little bit.
You see one of those things out in
Jeez.
the wild and you would piss yourself.
What if it was like I'd be freaked out like if it jumped on me as big as it is and like normally bug jumps on me just all right go away little guy. But like that is like I'm liable to stab myself in the leg trying to kill whatever this alien trying to eat my leg. It's a face hugger, Ian.
Exactly. Well, I mean, actually, you mentioned that.
Oh God,
Um,
please no.
uh, you mentioned. Well, I'm saying you mentioned that. The concept of the face hugger, the head crabs, or things like that.
You ever seen
You
a
know,
coconut crab?
yeah, coconut crabs. Exactly. A coconut crab.
Yep.
You ever? I mean, they're harmless. Well, relatively speaking, because people have died from coconut crabs falling out of trees and landing and like hitting them in the
Yeah.
head.
Yep.
But I mean, they're massive, but they're harmless.
Yeah. They're
But
they're huge.
they're huge and
Yep.
terrifying looking if you've ever seen one. So,
Right. So I
um,
mean,
you know,
again, that goes back to a lot of our talk earlier of it may some of these things may have just been a creature that somebody saw. It was out of the ordinary just enough that it freaked them out. Like you know how it is. Like if you ever been like absolutely terrified of something, and when you try to regale the tale to somebody, you can't. It was you were panicked. You didn't really. I didn't get a good look at it. I didn't get a picture of it. Well, I think it was this tall. It may have been this tall.
right. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's obviously creatures of legend and things like that all over the
Oh,
place, and
absolutely.
I would say there's definitely some differences between like creatures of legend and cryptids. When we think
Right.
of creatures of legend, as Tim said, we're talking about things like the Gorgon or the Manticore. The if you think about like a Manticore, it's like six different creatures stitched together, so
Right.
it's probably not something that's going to exist out there. Maybe just a very bored taxidermist,
Right.
um, freaking people out or something. But
Exactly. I mean, it is interesting though. Like when we talk about creatures of legend, how and you had kind of alluded to, like pretty much every culture has their own version of some kind of dragon. And
mhm,
it's interesting how many of them were cultures that these stories started popping up in the same, like right around the same time frame, when those cultures had no way to communicate, but yet they all had a very similar. That I think is absolutely fascinating, honestly.
yep,
Completely,
yeah,
completely independent from each other, still came up with something very similar.
yeah, yeah. And I think it some of it is going to go back to um, creatures that actually existed that people have stumbled upon or seen or the likes. And I mean, God only knows what was around and what went extinct,
Right?
back in the Egyptian eras, in the Greco-Roman era.
Right? Absolutely.
The when the Vikings were the ones that were exploring, exploring the seas in the 1300s and things like that. Like, what was around then that isn't around now that they
Absolutely.
saw? So I mean, there's uh, a huge amount of possibilities out there, and I think again we talk about some things where people may invent cryptids to explain natural phenomena.
Right.
There's the concept of the Thunderbird, right? Here in the United States, it was a Native American um, construct initially, and it was used to explain things like thunder. That
Right.
you know, the creature flew across the sky, and the flap of its wings caused the sound of thunder.
Right.
Um,
I mean, yeah, it's and I think that's a lot of what separates legends from cryptids. Cryptids, I mean, for the most part, while some of them have been cited for a long time, legends are so ingrained in the world, and they seem to have more importance. I keep going back to Bigfoot. It's a big unknown ape creature. The Thunderbird literally was a big part of an entire culture explaining why the world works the way it does. I mean,
right.
I think that's one of that's not the only defining difference between the two, but that's definitely one of the major points. Um,
I mean, we even the Greeks had personifications of the same kind of things. Apollo, Apollo rode his chariot of fire across the sky, and caused the sun to would drag the sun across the sky.
yeah,
Yeah,
that is legendary
yeah,
because
exactly.
at that we know that is a legend. It is a thing that we know doesn't exist. Versus a cryptid is
Right.
something that might exist. We just don't know if it does or not. I mean, eventually, if they ever do disprove, Nessie as it will stop being a cryptid. At that point, it's the legend of Nessie.
Yeah, I mean, it goes into the concept of a folk tale at that point.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
It doesn't go any further. And then there are, there are some examples of pseudo legends, cryptids that do kind of wind up being real. We mentioned the coelacanth and things like that. But if you look at on a more human level, people, you know, Bram Stoker's Dracula and whatnot, vampires, they don't exist. Well, I mean, if you look at some of the people like what's her name, Elizabeth Bathory. If you're aware of Elizabeth Bathory, she was a countess
Yep.
uh, that was thought to. She was known to have killed over 80 people.
Yeah.
They're thinking up to 650,
Wow.
and she would quite literally bathe in blood
Yeah.
because she felt like it kept her youthful. So,
Well, I mean,
uh,
even Dracula himself is entirely inspired by Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Impaler,
right,
and he did. And he's actually a side note. He's a really interesting person because most people you think Vlad the Impaler, you think, oh, he was a horrible mass murderer. But to the people of his homeland, he's actually considered a religious hero. Not that they worship him, but because he was so fervent in the faith of his people that he defended it any way he could. So they considered him a hero, which is
yep.
it's really interesting that again different perspective. But yeah, it's legends are fun, cryptids are fun. Um, it would like I would I know like the study of cryptids isn't considered a
It's considered a pseudoscience.
yeah, it's something that most you're not going to see Bill Nye starting funding research to find cryptids, but it's still there are people that they devote their lives to trying to prove the existence of cryptids or specific cryptids. So I mean it is something that people definitely have a passion for. It's something that it's fun to talk about, it's fun to share stories about them. But I mean I imagine that a lot of cryptids, like we had kind of mentioned, are gonna eventually fade from potential creatures and are gonna fall into the category of legends, folk tales.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. We've gushed over some of our favorite critters out there. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the chupacabra. I'm Puerto Rican, so
So I mean it's from your neck of the woods.
right. Haha, neck, goat sucker.
Ah, see what I did there?
He didn't do it on purpose. Anyway, so I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up for now.
Okay.
We thank you for joining us as always. We look forward to seeing you next time. You can always, again, find us out there on social media and our hosting platform, anchor.fm, owned by Spotify. And as I said, social media. So play facebook.com/non sequitur nerds, Twitter at non sequitur nerd, twitch.tv/non sequitur nerds. And of course, you can find some of our video recordings on both Spotify video podcasts and youtube.com/non sequitur nerds.
I say, and as a side note, this episode will probably not be available on Spotify video right away. There's an issue that I'm working on, but we should, as soon as we get that fixed, any of the videos since we started posting on Spotify will be.
Yep. So, alrighty. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for now. So, thank you again for joining us. We hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, and afternoon, night, twilight, whatever. Well, not twilight. No, no sparkly
Yeah,
vampires.
we,
Those
we
are the bad. Those are the bad cryptids.
those are the bad. We know they exist. We don't want them to.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you again, folks. So, as always, for the non sequitur nerds, I'm Ian.
And I'm Tim. Night, everybody.